Okay. So here we are. We're going to start where we ended on Thursday. We'll go through and we'll talk more about the bacteria stuff once we get to the intestines. Okay, so you've got, alright, you have the stomach. Deep to that curve of the stomach, so you have the stomach but like farther back in, you've got the pancreas, which people, you all haven't done this, but traditionally people confuse the pancreas, the spleen, and the liver. They're like, it's a little lumpy kind of there somewhere in the middle. The pancreas is neither the liver nor the spleen. It has some endocrine functions, so it's got, it's going to secrete insulin, it's going to secrete glucagon. That's just endocrine system stuff. Well, anybody who's in this class next semester, when we talk about the endocrine system, you'll meet the pancreas again. For now, its exocrine function is to secrete, or to make pancreatic juice. That's legitimately what it's called, pancreatic juice. And it's got these little cells that do that. And yeah, this pancreatic juice, you can make a lot of it. Like, you know, more than a liter of pancreatic juice a day. This stuff is somewhat basic. Alright? So, what's going to happen is, back to this picture here. See that picture? Chyme is going to be coming out of the stomach. And it's swimming in acid when it comes out. And acid is great for doing a whole bunch of things in the stomach, but it's hard on the rest of the system. So the pancreas is pouring base on this to neutralize the acidic chyme that's coming out. Yeah. It's also going to be putting out some electrolytes, which is important later, we'll see this in a minute. It's going to be producing, or sending out a whole bunch of digestive enzymes. So it's going to create, send out a whole bunch of proteases. They're going to, so the ACE symbol, the ACE portion of a word means cut. So lipases are cutting lipids. Nucleases are cutting nucleic acids. Proteases are cutting proteins, right? They're cutting them down. Proteases are secreted in the inactive form so that you don't like self-digest. There's amylase that's going to cut down, it's not shown on the picture, but amylase is going to cut down carbohydrates, lipases, lipids, nucleases, lipids. Yeah, so they're secreted, so these proteases are secreted inactive, the ones that digest protein. The ones that digest lipids you don't really worry about so much because, like, there's not much fat floating around in the system. But the protein ones, you wait to turn on until they're out of the pancreas. So here's a picture of where we're looking at, right? So there's the liver that's superior to this. We've got the gallbladder right there. We've got the pancreas. So we're going to be having bile coming from liver gallbladder situation, pancreatic secretions coming from the pancreas, and both of those get regulated by hormonal controls. The hormones are going to be like, oh, okay, should we put secretions out into the duodenum or not? Great, so now, at this point in our life, we have stuff coming from the stomach, exiting the stomach, entering the duodenum. We've also have bile and pancreatic secretions coming out as well. And now we're officially in the small intestine. Small intestine is the major organ of both digestion and absorption. I want the stomach to be the major organ of digestion and absorption, but it's not. The stomach's helpful, the stomach's great. The small intestine is where it's at. This thing is long. It's longer than you are tall. Unless, like, you're, yeah, basically, it's going to be longer than you are tall. Just across the board. It's not super big. So it's not super wide. It's about as wide as from your, like, this wide. Which isn't bad. It's small hose size. Yeah. We've got a picture there. You see it all folded up. It's the small intestine not because it's short, it's not short, it's long. It's small because the diameter of that tube is smaller. Right? We are going to mess around in the lab with a whole bunch of digestion absorption things. I'm still actually working on all the stuff to do. But one of the things we're going to be modeling, and sorry online people, we're going to see how we can do this online, is you're going to try to have particles get cross the surface, right? The more surface area you have, the easier it is to have things cross, right? Because then you don't have to, like, wait in line, right? Have you ever been, back when you used to travel, if you ever traveled, right, in the distant past, have you ever been, like, at an airport and you see that there are all these different potential stalls for checking in, but there's only one that's open? Yeah, you seen this? And then everybody's funneling through and you're like, oh my goodness, right? If you have the more of them you have open, the more it goes faster, not because how long it takes for you personally to, like, push the buttons, get your ticket, it's just you don't have to wait, right? The small intestines are doing a similar thing where they're going to say, okay, we want this to be as large as possible because we're trying to move stuff across this surface, and if we have lots of surface area, it's easier to get that done because the goo you have is in contact with the surface a lot. I looked this up. I don't know if this is creepy or not. So your book talks about how the surface area is this many, but I actually don't know how much this, like, means in pictures. This is the same size as this tennis court. Just so you know. So that's much small intestinal surface area. It's modified with all these things to give it tons of surface area, and we're going to see actually what this looks like. Do you want another video? Are we up for videos? We keep going. Either way is good. It's a short video. It's not as exciting as the last one. We'll watch it. When I checked this one, I watched it like 2 times speed, so it was reasonably interesting then, but I don't know if it's not that one.
After food is digested into small and soluble food molecules, it can be absorbed into the circulatory system. This absorption process mainly takes place in the ileum. On the inner wall of the ileum, there are a large number of finger-like projections called villi. Each villus has a lymph vessel called lacteal in the center. The lacteal is surrounded by a network of capillaries. Water-soluble food molecules such as monosaccharides, amino acids and minerals, as well as water-soluble vitamins such as vitamin C, are absorbed through the walls of the villi into the capillaries by diffusion and active transport. As the absorption of digested food into the blood increases the water potential of the content in the ileum, water is drawn into the blood by osmosis. On the other hand, Fatty acids and glycerol enter the epithelium of the villus by diffusion. In the epithelial cells, they recombine into fine lipid droplets. The lipid droplets then enter the lymph in the lacteal. Lipid-soluble vitamins, such as vitamins A and D, are also absorbed into the lacteal. The lipids and lipid-soluble vitamins in the lacteal are transported to the main lymph vessels and eventually to the bloodstream.
Yeah. No. Ah. Stop. Okay, we see this surface area idea. We're gonna look at this a couple times. Huh, it's pretty. Note all those absorptive cells all along the edge, and now instead of having it smooth, you've increased the surface area dramatically. It gets better. Observe, there's the surface area on something like this, you can't actually really measure because it depends on how small your measuring stick is, how much you count for how much space there is, but it's increased the surface area so dramatically. And they're actually really kind of pretty cells. So far so good? Okay. We talked about actually on Thursday. Through the whole GI system, I thought we needed to put a slide in it. The whole GI system has such rapidly dividing cells that when cancer treatments target rapidly dividing cells, it often hurts the GI system. But I forgot to put that in yet last time. Okay, so the small intestines, we've got this anatomy for it, right? That we have, it's right there next to the stomach. The chyme's gonna come in. It's got secretions that are feeding into it from the gallbladder and from the pancreas. That's great. The digestive stuff that's going to go down is huge. Chyme from the stomach's going to come in. It's got a little bit of that. So the carbohydrates from the stomach are somewhat digested, usually. The proteins are somewhat digested, but not completely taken down. And the fats aren't digested at all. Are we okay with the difference between mechanical breakdown, like crunching it with your teeth, versus digesting, where you actually are pulling apart into small components? Yeah? Okay. So the goop from the stomach is entering the small intestines. It's going to take 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 hours for the small intestines to get the nutrients out, and most of the water, actually. Small intestines are trying to pull the good stuff from what you ate into your body. So it's going to need lots of enzymes to get this done. Let's see. Yeah. The small intestines are going to be pulling bunches of stuff in. So they're going to be pulling bile, they're going to be pulling bicarbonate to make it alkaline, a whole bunch of digestive enzymes. There are brush border enzymes that it gets to make itself. The brush border is this thing right here. And those, they've got enzymes bound to it that are going to do the very, very last little bit of digestion. But okay, so you've got chyme entering the small intestines. Now, the problem, it's not really a problem, but it's a little bit of a problem. When you've eaten something that's like actually food, right? This is good. But there are more particles in that than there are just in whatever's in your body, right? So you're eating potato chips, right? There's a ton of salt there. There's a bunch of lipids, there's a bunch of proteins. It's very tonic. There's lots of chunks in it. And if you have a little cell in the intestines, and outside there's chyme, and the chyme is hypertonic, right? There's a lot of solutes. Water is going to flow out of your cells. Your cells will not be happy about this, right? You don't want to dehydrate yourself by eating potato chips, right? You don't want your cells to like shrivel. That's a problem. So, because this chyme is usually really hypertonic, you need to slow it down so you don't just like have a big whoosh of water leaving the cells. So chyme is regulated how fast it's going to be moving through. You're also going to change the pH of this chyme, right? So it started out super acidic, you're going to make it less acidic. As chymes enter, so this is chyme getting through, right? So chyme's coming out of the stomach. You're going to be basically diluting it down a little bit, so it's not so hypertonic, so it's not going to pull water out. You're going to be neutralizing it. You're going to be mixing it with bile and pancreatic juice as it's coming through. And you've got some refluxes in the whole system to make sure that you don't just overload the system. The idea is don't let anything into the small intestines until they can handle it. Fair enough? Okay, so now things have plopped themselves into the small intestine, and after a meal, so like you've just eaten, well, I should probably put these in different words, but whatever. Segmentation, the small intestines, we'll do this first. Peristalsis is that whole snake swallowing an egg kind of motion, right? Where it's going to start, and it's going to be this contraction of the smooth muscle that moves all the way down, right? And it's pushing the blob through. Fair enough? Bless you. You can feel that kind of motion almost if you swallow something, right? And it's just like you can feel the muscles going down all the way. Great. That's going to scoot stuff just through. Great. If that's not going on, if you, say, have just eaten, the small intestine can do something called segmentation, which instead of just moving one direction, it's where it squishes back and forth, where it's got contractions, relaxations, to basically smoosh the chyme back and forth. It's trying to slosh it around. It's trying to do some more mechanical breakdown. Most of the mechanical breakdowns already happened, right? You had teeth probably in the stomach, but some of that. You're also trying to, okay, this maybe not great. You know how, like, if you have a blender and you're, like, making your bestest smoothie, and you blend it, and then there's still, like, chunks of your strawberries there that you haven't mixed? You can't just, like, poke it with a spoon to move everything around? Yeah, that. You're trying to smoosh everything around so that everything gets to touch the surface area just fine. There's not like a blob in the middle that just like stays in the middle and never hits the walls. You want to smoosh everything around, and that's great. Concerns about that? So the small intestines have been pulling out tons and tons of nutrients. They're pulling out nutrients, absorbing it, and also finishing the digestion, right? So they're digesting lipids, they're digesting all sorts of things. Once you go from duodenum to ileum, you're going to end up in the large intestine. So there are several portions of it. Let's look at it right here. Okay. We all see the shape right there that goes like up and around and over and back down? Okay. The small intestines are going to feed in, so there's the ileum. Small intestines are going to feed into the large intestine. Great. There's the appendix, which is right here. Sorry, all my people, appendix, I should change it. Appendix, right? Old textbooks say, no, it just does its thing. Does anybody actually know what it does? Oh, you're about to. This was somebody's, I can't remember who. It was somebody's, I want to know what the appendix does on their, like, last week's quiz thing. what it does is you have a whole bunch of lymphoid tissue there, but that's not super relevant right now. You'll know based on the shape, right? Time goes through, comes up. There's not a lot going on here, right? It's not like directly in the path. You see that? What this does, we think, is it kind of just sits around holding basically a handful of bacteria, which doesn't seem super important until we get to the C. diff situation, where having your gut have appropriate bacteria is really important. And there are times when you completely clear out your system. So let's say you are very, very sick and there's a bunch of vomit and a bunch of diarrhea and you kind of just wipe out everything in your GI system. It's kind of rough, right? You've gotten rid of a ton of bacteria. But fortunately, your handy dandy appendix has been holding a little tiny backup pile of well, great, I can repopulate, right? Think the Noah Ark of bacteria, right? The problem, though, is the appendix, sorry, I'm pointing right here. The appendix, you know how it's this little tiny blob? Sorry, it's coming off of this part of the cecum. It's easy to get twisted up. If you get twisted up, it can get blocked. And that can be a problem. I actually have a whole slide of that can be a problem. Appendicitis. Usually there's a blockage. Infectious bacteria gets trapped. It's basically things start to rot. It can hurt a lot. What's really scary is if the appendix gets full of all this nasty bacteria, big, full of all this nasty bacteria, big, and then ruptures, because so long as the bacteria was inside the appendix, the body was like, yeah, okay, that's a problem, but it's outside of us, because it's in the GI system, whatever, who cares what's in there, you eat roadkill, I don't know what you do, right? But as soon as this leaks into the body, that can be a problem. And I guess good news, appendicitis usually hurts enough that people know that they should go get some help. And so the treatment for it is to be like, well, how attached really were you to the appendix? Not that much. You can, you can handle losing it. We're okay with that? And while we're here, okay, so appendix. I've got the ascending colon, it's going up, right? You've got the transverse colon across. You've got the descending colon, this whole thing you can just call it the colon. You've got the rectum, which is a whole series of valves. There are actually 3 of them, which are going to, good news, there's some safety valves where you can release gas without releasing feces. This is good news. And then there's the anal canal, which is where the body opens up to the outside. So, the anal canal, it's going to open the body to the anus, and you've got a sphincter there to close and open as well. We're good? The large intestines aren't as, well, they're interesting. I think the small intestines are more interesting. But the large intestines are there. They don't have those circular folds. They're not doing digestive secretions. They don't have little villi. They do have what are called crypts. It's looking here. They do have crypts. This is it's just a picture for you. It's not as complicated. But yeah, it's columnar epithelial tissue hanging out there. Okay. On to the bacterial flora. Bacterial flora are a whole, I realize I've been pushing hard for if you need something to study in biology, go for neuroscience, because there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, like tons that we don't know. That's true. Another low-hanging fruit one where there's like a ton we don't know and need to know about is the immune system. Whew, that's another one. Another one is this. You have what's called a microbiome. Yeah, you. It's where you've got a lot of things that are not you. It's not your DNA, it's not your cells that have decided to make their own little happy home inside of you. And the estimates vary wildly, but the general consensus estimate is you probably have about 10 times more other cells than you have you cells. Right? You're outnumbered. Is this concerning? Are we good?
That's just something new that I didn't
Oh, I know, right? Oh, did I can't remember if I put it in or not, because I totally forgot. So I looked it up, and they actually have a weight of like, I can't remember how much. How much does this weigh? Let me see. Briefly, if I can find this quickly. It was something that was like, huh. I hate this keyboard. Dry weight? No. Okay. 2 to 6 pounds of bacteria? Which, I mean, and like, all you people are doing stuff with like Dr. Keller, right? Bacteria don't weigh a lot. So 2 to 6 pounds of bacteria is an impressive amount of bacteria. Right? Like, dude. And medicine has, and so, anatomy physiology up until now has basically been like, kind of aware of the rattlesnakes of bacteria, being like, oh, don't have that one. But other than that, it's been like, sure, they're living inside you. So, you've got bacterial flora, lots of different types, we don't know how many types. They can come in from food you're eating, right? You can get them in from either end. To colonize the colon, they can come in from small intestine or through the anus. Because bacteria are small, it's easy to get in and out. They're doing a bunch of stuff. Like, so much stuff. They're going to be fermenting indigestible carbohydrates, and they'll also release a bunch of gas doing that. You know how cows can eat grass and you cannot eat grass? You notice this, right? It's not because cows are somehow magically better at chewing, right? The problem is, in grass there's a bunch of cellulose, and your cells don't you don't have enzymes that know how to cut cellulose, right? You're like, I don't know how to do this. Cows don't really have the enzyme either, but they have a bunch of helpful bacterium who know how to do that. And so they have these little bacteria buddies living inside of them. Those bacteria buddies break down grass and other things. And then the byproducts that the bacteria makes, basically the bacteria poop, is what the cows are like, yeah, go me. Right? Same deal for you. Except not the cow part. These bacteria can digest carbohydrates that would be indigestible to you without them. They're very helpful there. They're also going to make vitamin B and some vitamin K. And if you don't have these, this is bad. Like problematic. But the thing that the video is about, and online people, there's a video here to go ahead and watch. It's interesting. A large part of what they're doing is just keeping other bacteria out. So you have so much bacteria in there that's like the harmless, normal, chill kind, that if there's a pathogenic kind of bacteria that shows up, it just doesn't have room to take over. It's gotta like get in line. The immune system is going to try to destroy bacteria, helpful kind or harmful kind, that break the mucosal barrier. So your body's like, fine, bacteria, you can live in me, but don't come inside. Right? Like, stay in the GI system, that's fine. I don't want you floating around my bloodstream. Fair enough with that? But yeah, it's starting to, it's starting to look that microbial problems, looks like it can cause problems from anything from weight. It's actually, obesity has a whole bunch of things going on, right? The most simplistic is too many calories in to calories out, right? That's obvious, and that's a thing. But also, bacterial over or undergrowths that are weird can cause that to be dramatically different. Like, it's impressive. It looks like some diseases are interacting with this somehow. And the one I'm kind of curious about is that mood seems to be affected, which, like, makes sense, but the mechanism needs some more work. There are tons of neurons there in the GI system, like tons of neurons, and they do talk to the central nervous system, but something's going on. But the whole idea for this is basically if you don't have grass in your lawn, you grow weeds. You just do. So you want to keep the good bacteria so you don't overgrow with bad kind. And that was the whole video this morning that people were mildly interested in. C. diff bacteria is bacteria that a lot of people have, not everybody has it, but a lot of people have in their innards. It's not a big deal. It's one of many kinds. But it's one of the ones that's hard to kill with antibiotics. So you basically pour Roundup on your lawn, and you kill most of the weeds, except one kind of weed which you haven't killed, which is thistles, and now there's no competition. And so it just goes nuts. And then because there's nothing keeping it in check, it makes the bowels leaky. So, like, goo that shouldn't be coming through leaks into the body. That causes problems. People have problems with that. All the problems the girl was saying. Yeah. So then, yep. Concerns, questions? Okay, we're getting there. We're so nearly done with this. Okay. So, in the large intestines, the food's going to stay in there for a long time. I mean, I don't know if you have noticed, but based on when you eat a meal and when you poop that meal out, there's a long time, right? Bacteria are going to still digest some, but most of the digestion that was should have already happened. What's going to happen in the large intestines are you're going to make some vitamins with your bacteria, and you're going to pull back water and electrolytes, right? You know for a fact what happens if chyme moves through too quickly through the large intestines. If you ever had diarrhea, right? It moves through really fast. You don't have time to reclaim the water. This is a problem. It's not pleasant for people. And your body also doesn't want you to be losing tons of water that way. The body has worked hard to get that water. It'd like to keep it, typically. So basically, the large intestines are moving feces to the anus and along the way pulling water back out. Yeah? The large intestine is important. Again, I'm not suggesting that, like, you can just take out all your organs. You don't need a stomach. You don't need an appendix. You don't need a spleen. You don't need a large intestine. But, like, people do survive without this. Yeah. Questions, concerns? Oh, also with that, who was asking me? Somebody was asking me. Sorry, I do remember conversations. I don't remember always who I have them with. It's been a problem. With stomach cancers, often the solution is just to take it out and pull the small intestine up and just attach it. Anyways, talking with somebody. Anyways, okay, but we're back onto the large intestine. Okay. Defecation, the anatomical, physiological physiological term for pooping, right? You're moving feces now they've had the water pulled out, so they're drier. Moving it towards the rectum. I don't have that many things. As things stretch, right, as there's distension, there's a spinal reflex. The central nervous system's paying attention to this. A spinal reflex called the defecation reflex that's going to send a bunch of signals. And it's going to relax the internal anal sphincter to say, okay, go for it. You have conscious control over the external anal sphincter. So there's the, when we look at the urinary system, it's going to be a similar way, where there is one that's controlled by a reflex, like, oh, open up now, and another one that you can consciously control. And then the rectum's going to contract, and you'll expel feces. So far, so good? Doing okay? Yes. Depending on how long we have, okay, we're fine. Sorry, let me pull this up. I told her I would show it to you all. Come on. I'll go ahead and send it out when I send this out. I really hope I'm saying her name right. Rashika? Does anybody know her? She's hanging out in Sri Lanka right now because she can't come here because COVID. She made a whole mnemonic slide for us about enzymes in the digestive system. And I'll show that to you. And it's very nice. Thank you for making it. But where we're going right now is onto some of the physiological chunks, and we'll probably spend 10 minutes here. We've seen the anatomy of the whole system, right, if we move through. A couple things just to add. You've got to have these molecules small enough to get absorbed across. If they're too big, it's not going to happen. Lab is a lot about this today. Okay, sorry. You can break things down. That's important. Things to show you. Online people, there's this, these slides to look at. I mean, you will too. If I ever tell the online people they can do something, you're more than welcome to do it as well. Looking at the GI tract, we're back to, sorry. Yeah, back to ileum. We're going to go in. Ooh, not so big. So we're in the small intestines here. We can tell because of the lumpiness. Materials that are coming from inside, being pulled in, are going to have to pass through the epithelial cells rather than between them. Let's see. So stuff's coming in across here. It's not that there are gaps. As you zoom super in, it's easier to play with on your own. Oh gosh. I actually really like this online histology set, by the way. Here's a pretty good spot. Okay, that's as clear as we're going to get. These cells, right, we see that it looks like there's one layer of it here, small intestines. They're tall, but they're like smack dab next to each other. Stuff that's coming in from here, that's called, well, this side's the apical side. You've got the lumen here, this is the apical side. Stuff has to go in from the apical side into the cell itself, and then it crosses through the basolateral side, through the blood side. Right? It's coming in through the cells, not through gates. lipid molecules, it was in the video, lipid molecules get absorbed through the membrane just by passive absorption, just comes through. Other polar molecules are going to need to be pulled in by active transport. The cells are going to have to be like, I want you, come in. Oh, see, I said that. Oh my goodness. That's the picture there. Briefly, mostly for your studies, you got to break down carbohydrates with amylase. You've got to break down proteins with a series of steps. So you've got these proteases that come in. They're going to break things down. You have several different kinds. Lipids, yeah, these are mostly just so when you see lab later, when you look at it, you can know what's going on. Lipids, you're going to digest through lipases. You're going to first use bile salts to chunk them up smaller, and then you'll go ahead and pull them across into the body. Nucleic acids, which we're not going to do in lab because I don't know a good way to show this. Carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins are like the big things that you eat, typically. But the nuclei of cells you ingest have DNA and RNA, right? Like there is that stuff there. And you need those amino acids to make more amino acids for you, or you've got to get them somehow. So yeah, you break these down, and it works great. I think that's all we have for the small intestines, for the GI system, but we do have start of the urinary system. I did have a couple more slides just to look at it. Vitamins get absorbed. Did I talk to you all about vitamins before? I feel like I talked to some class about this. Maybe this was Gen Bio. About how vitamins, some good, more doesn't mean necessarily better. Okay, I'm making note. I will show you a video about vitamins next time. Briefly, vitamins are really important. Typically, they act as like a coenzyme for things. If it's a fat-soluble vitamin, you have to dissolve it in fat. If it's a water-soluble vitamin, it's easy, you just absorb it. Vitamin B is freaking huge, and you have to have something called intrinsic factor, which is what your stomach was making back a little while ago, to be able to pull it into your body. And you absorb electrolytes back, and that's good. The end. Okay. So far, so good. Food comes in, you break it up, you pull nutrients out of it, you pull a lot of water out of it, you get rid of the undigested gunk, you're good to go. Great. On to the urinary system. Are people fine to have a new topic? Last few minutes of class? Okay. Somebody also said, I promise I read through all of your things you're interested in. Oh, while we're there, whoever said why do your fingers go pruny? Did you get a chance to look this up? Because otherwise I want to talk to you about this. Okay, well, I'm going to talk about this. Somebody was like, how come fingers go pruny? Right? It used to be said that, like, and you know this isn't right, but old books used to say, like, oh, your fingers go pruny because of osmotic pressure. Of osmosis. And so you put your hands in water, your feet in water, and because, there's more solutes inside your cells than outside your cells, water pours out, and you, like, shrink. Right? You know that's not right, because, like, the rest of you doesn't do that, and your fingers go pruny even if you're in, like, really salty water, right? It's actually, and I only recently learned this because of whoever told me to look it up. I'm like, oh, was it you, Emily? Yeah. It had not like occurred to me to look up, but I looked it up. It's apparently, like everything worth having in the body, a nervous system response, because people with neuropathic damage don't do it. It's a nervous system response that's like, oh, you should wrinkleify yourself up. And the thought is, so it's definitely nervous system, because if the nervous system's broken, you could be soaking in the bathtub and you don't prune up. The thought is, the body realizes you're wet, it's slippery, I'm gonna give you a better grip. I know, right? Also, I think my body is overly enthusiastic with how much it thinks I'm gripping with my toes, but that's beside the point, like, anyways. But yeah, okay, so there's that. That side note aside, somebody said the urinary system is my thing. So we're gonna go over that also because we just need to go over the urinary system. The urinary system's getting rid of junk from the blood. It's, for a lot of people, in a lot of people's heads, the urinary system and the digestive system are like buddies, right? Because you're like, I'm getting rid of waste products. And yes, everything in the body is interconnected, but the urinary system's doing its own thing. It's not really caring that much about the digestive system. Like, it doesn't really care. I mean, it does care because it's trying to get rid of waste products from metabolism, but it's its own special thing. So it's trying to remove waste junk from the blood, which you did get because of digestion. It's also going to store and excrete urine, so that's important. And it's also going to mess around with blood pressure and volume. Yeah. What? Sorry. I didn't know what happened. You'd think by now in my life I could, like, know how to do my job, but still there are some things that surprise me. Zoom meetings, too. Did so many Zoom, advising meetings, and every time I'm like, how do I share my screen? Alright. The urinary system's great. The kidneys are what's carrying the urinary system. Like, seriously, they're doing basically everything worth doing that the urinary system does. They're going to regulate water, they're going to regulate ions, they're going to keep track of the acid-base balance, they're going to excrete the metabolic wastes, toxins, drugs, all this stuff. They're going to, did I say mess around with blood pressure? They're going to mess around with blood pressure, and also they're going to, like, turn on vitamin D. They look like kidney beans, which is why kidney beans are called kidney beans. And you can feel them, like if you go right back here. If you've ever been really dehydrated and felt like somebody was squeezing part of your lower back, has this ever happened? No? Well done, people who get enough water. Oh, it's happened to some people? Yeah. If you're dehydrated, you can feel it. Yep. You're like, ah. Your kidneys are like, help, please help. Yeah. These are their kidneys. Okay. Urinary system structures. Kidneys right here. Right? They're filtering blood, gonna remove urea and some other wastes. The ureters, do you see those little tubes? They're getting urine from the kidneys. They're going to transport it down, getting ready for urination. There's a sphincter. Why did I? Aha, that's a better picture. Well, let's talk about it. Yeah. Kidneys, ureters, right? You've got a urinary bladder that's going to hold it, right? You've got a sphincter that can control the opening of the bladder, and then the urethra lets urine exit the body. So far, so good. The piping is actually fairly straightforward. Kidneys, ureters as drainage pipes, a bladder that's going to hold it, a sphincter that's going to let it out, and then the urethra, which is actually this part exits. Here's a better picture. You see that there? Great. Things to notice. You see this random goopy stuff on top of it? See that? Any idea what that is? Yeah! Which is kind of a weird spot to put them. I mean, it's fine, but it works. You've got these glands that just like perched on top like little hats. They're just kind of hanging out there. Endocrine system time, we'll come back to them. We've got adrenal glands hanging out in the kidneys. They're not doing like anything with the kidneys, they just live there. Alright, so we're gonna ignore those. So yeah, they're retroperitoneal. They're basically in the back of you, right? They're basically mirror images of each other, except you'll see that the right kidney is farther down, the left kidney's up higher, because the liver's like squashing it. Well, not squashing, but the liver's crowding it. But yeah, other than that, you should have two of them, nearly on the same level, but not quite because of the liver. Here we go. So far, so good. We're going to get through some of the anatomy. I'm suddenly realizing, sorry, I'm looking at my notes, I'm suddenly realizing that with all these things, I was making these slides on a different computer with a different, like, I guess version of PowerPoint, and it, like, did something to my words. Alright. Yeah, I should check. I should do this on school computers. Okay. There's a whole bunch of supportive tissues that are gonna wrap around the kidneys. You've got some connective tissue, renal fascia that's gonna anchor it. Is everyone okay that when someone says renal, it means kidney related? Like really old poetry is gonna talk about like my reins or this or that or the other. Kidneys again. Yeah. You've got this fascia, connective tissue holding things on. You've got a fat cushion around it, and you also have a fibrous capsule that's like coating it, that's trying to keep infection out. So if bacteria or viruses or whatever are floating around inside the body, the kidney still wants to have a protective layer to keep them out. Yeah? This is a weird cut to look at, but we're looking down through the body. See that? This is the back. We've got the spinal column right here. We've got our kidneys right there. You see those okay? You see that, so there's the fibrous capsule surrounding it, this cushion of fat holding it up, and then outside everything you've got this connective tissue just holding it in place. Yeah? Oh, yeah, we do that. One last thing, and then we'll go. Just think about problems. Let's look. Okay. When you're dissecting something out, you don't normally notice the fat. But let's say you've got a whole bunch of fat holding these kidneys in place. What happens? So, observe the kidney. Observe the little tiny tube. What happens if the fat that's propping this up suddenly is gone? Suddenly just isn't there. So it used to have a layer of fat underneath it, and now it doesn't. What happened to the kidney? Yeah, it physically just drops. What does that do, based on your extensive knowledge of garden hoses, what does that do to the tube? It kinks it. Can everybody take a moment and realize that you do not want your kidneys, you don't want your ureters to kink? Yeah, like feeling physically uncomfortable? Yeah, okay. It's called renal ptosis, and I don't know why. I mean, I do know why. I'm pretty sure it's a different version of PowerPoint. But I don't want to go around having to update my PowerPoint. Good heavens. But I'm going to have to, because I could probably actually save it as a different version too. Sorry. Okay. So it's called renal ptosis, where the P is silent. One or both of the kidneys drop lower. it's a problem. So basically, this happens in starvation or other really rapid weight loss. People lose the fat, the kidney drops, and it drops. The ptosis is just the dropping part. If the ureter gets kinked, urine will back up into the kidney. If urine backs up into the kidney, it's called hydrophoresis, and this is very, very bad. So renal ptosis isn't the only thing that can cause backed up urine. You can have blockages in the ureter too that can back up as well. But this can really damage kidneys. So don't do that. We're good? Questions? We're solved? Digestion, we're okay with the idea. It comes in, goes out, things happen in the middle. Yeah. We have lab today. Yeah, I think that's about it, right? Am I missing something? I feel like I'm missing something. But I felt like that since the beginning of the semester, which is not a good sign. I don't know.